Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Today's webinar is Before the Storm, Alternative Construction Procurement for Your Disaster Prep Kit. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editor-in-Chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar today is presented by Gordian. Now I'd like to introduce your speakers. Your speakers today of three are John Castillo, Jackie Zaldana, and James Flanagan. John is an account manager based out of Texas, and he's worked at Gordian for over 7 years. He prides himself on developing long-term relationships with a portfolio of clients and working with facility owners to determine the best fit for Gordian's construction procurement solutions. An experienced senior account manager, Jackie Zaldana, has been with Gordian for over 6 years, and she holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering with a concentration in construction management from the University of Pittsburgh. Your third speaker today is James Flanagan, and he's an account manager out of New York City. Now in his 5th year with Gordian, he specializes in helping clients procure construction for time-sensitive projects on a budget. Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to you without further ado. Thanks, John.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. As mentioned, my name is John Castillo with Gordian. This afternoon, we have a lot of great information to share with you, including some real-world life, some real-world examples of some emergency projects that have come up with our colleagues. Now, give me 1 second here. I'm having difficulty changing these. Okay, so types of emergencies. So let's talk a little bit about different types of emergencies. In our careers, we have all experienced some type of an emergency. And we've all experienced them, anything from your small water leaks, minor maintenance repairs, to storm damages, facilities damage, fires, man-made, and the more recent, the pandemic. And as we all know, one of the key elements to a successful emergency project is your response time. How quickly can we respond to an emergency situation? Now, at this time, I'd like to invite Jackie to share with us an example of an emergency project that she's experienced. Jackie?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jackie Saldana, as John mentioned, and I am in the DC area, based in DC, but I also work in Maryland and Virginia with housing authorities as clients, as well as universities, and then a federal client. So pretty much I've tackled all of these type of emergency situations. In 2011, in the DC area, we had that big earthquake for us in the DC area, but it did cause a lot of issues. Something that was completely unexpected came up, and we had to react immediately. Like literally, as soon as the earthquake finished, we had to go and respond, assess. We had a lot of structural damages in some of the garages, in some of our units, where we had to move residents out. So it was things that we had to do and cover immediately. Another thing that kind of comes to mind is definitely the storm damages. We've been dealing with a lot more windstorms and rainstorms, which has caused a lot of, again, structural issues with our roofs, our windows. After these storms, you have parts of roof that fly off. So again, emergency response, we have to go out there and make immediate repairs. And then another thing that it also has happened recently are man-made emergency situations like vandalism. We've dealt with a lot of things being in DC where life safety becomes an immediate concern. How do we fix these things where we deal with vandalism or fires that happen because of the area that we work in? And so again, it's having to work through these situations immediately and get these resolved. And I know James working in New York has some experience as well with these situations.
Yes, good afternoon all. As Jackie said, my name is James Flanagan, and I work in the New York City area with a few city agencies up here. And we deal with a lot of projects that require this immediate response. For example, at the Department of Environmental Protection Agency, they have an abundance of these emergency plumbing projects, which include everything from reconstruction of water mains, emergency wrapping of discharge pipes, temporary boiler installations at certain facilities, and then not to mention dealing with the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy from 2012. These are all projects that we need to get a response out right away to resolve before other damages occur. On another note, this year alone, just at the New York City Department of Sanitation, there have been some essential time-sensitive projects that have come up, such as riverbank dredging and the demolition of collapsed roof, where they are pressured to complete this work within a limited time frame. Especially with the winter months right around the corner, they need to get this work done and procure the jobs quickly. Also, as shortly as it sounds, there's also a lot of recurring issues with garbage trucks crashing into walls or trusses, which cause structural damage to their facilities and needs immediate action. So with these time-sensitive projects, the quicker you can get boots on the ground, the better. So whenever a response is delayed, further damages and expenses can occur, so that a quicker procurement is necessary. And with that, I'll pass that back over to John.
Thanks, James and Jackie, for sharing some of those examples with us. And as you guys have all heard, that during any emergency project, time is definitely of the essence. And so the quicker you can respond to these particular emergency situations, the better results that you'll see during your project. So emergency construction dilemmas. Obviously, once we get construction going during an emergency situation, during that process, we will start to experience some dilemmas or some challenges, if you will. Some of those dilemmas that we've seen: lack of quality contractors and specific subcontractors, price gouging, staff spread too thin, long lead times for materials and resources, and then complex rules about regulation and reimbursements. Now, according to the poll that was asked earlier, 31% have long lead times. This is a situation that I think we've all experienced, especially here recently with the pandemic. I know that I've had several projects that I've experienced personally myself where lead times have become a challenge, not only to get projects started on time, but to actually get those projects completed within the time frame that is allowed. Jackie or James, do you guys have any other examples here that you guys could share with us?
Yes, so actually on one of the current projects that I'm working on, what's happening is a lot of our HVAC and electrical equipment and material are, having extended times. So instead of the traditional 4 to 6 weeks, it's 10 to 12 weeks. And when you have fire panels or enunciator panels that go down and you have an entire building that literally is on a fire watch, you can't wait that time. So what is it? What are the things that you can do? And so you kind of need to get creative on these aspects. Of course, working in a quality and safe manner, but you have to come up with solutions that are the fix to make it safe now, and then plan for when you actually get the material, what you can do for the permanent fix. So that's definitely something that has been increasing since the pandemic, and it's kind of been around as well when you hit situations where you're working in projects that, if you're in a heating season, the demand is high. So it's been around, but it's definitely been something that you see more of now. Jane?
I just wanted to make a more general note here. So sometimes these long leads on materials and limited available resources, they're not in the owner's or contractor's control. So this puts more emphasis on the importance of being able to get that contractor on board quicker so materials can start being procured and this job can start being initiated and issued along the way, just to get that ball moving. And then I just wanted to touch briefly on that kind of leads to having the lack of quality contractors and specific subs, which was another high answer on the board here. And it can be challenging when time is limited. So to make it more tough at times, the cheapest bid on a project can sometimes result in the lowest quality of work. So having that qualified contractor already under contract and ready to perform will relieve owners of that pressure and help with these situations. So I'll pass that back over to John again.
I wanted to add to that too, James. In addition to it, one of the other things too is the partnerships that you kind of create through the contracts that you implement. And so one of the important things is that you have to make sure that you have contractors that put you as priority. And I think that's one of the big things. I remember during this those snowstorm that I had at one of the universities, we literally had to figure out how to remove snow from the entire campus. And that had never been done before. And so we had to rely on our quality contractors to kind of go in and figure it out. And it was literally them renting and using one of the backhoes that they had working on another project and getting people out there with shovels. And it was like a full weekend of people just out there. But when you have that kind of commitment and that priority, those are important things as well. So, yeah. John.
And these are all important aspects when dealing with emergency situations, and knowing all this information beforehand can actually help us get some of these emergency projects started rather quickly. I've personally experienced some of the staff spread thin recently due to the pandemic. We had a customer that it was only him and another guy in the office. And quite honestly, when these projects started to come up, as far as the emergency goes, you know, their staff was spread out pretty thin, and where they were focusing on particular projects before the emergency, and then after the emergency occurred, obviously they had to kind of refocus or take a step back and refocus on what was going to be more important to take care of, and therefore it kind of leaves staff spread out too thin in order to be able to manage all these projects all at once. And then obviously the long lead times. I think we've all experienced that here recently with the pandemic, and trying to get, you know, materials and resources on the job site as quickly as possible. So again, this all comes down to response time, trying to get everything done as quickly as possible at the preliminary phase of the actual project, so that we can see some of those things get started in a timely manner. So with that, again, every second counts. So when an emergency occurs, obviously time is of the essence. So expediting emergency procurement, which obviously is part of the process, try to help us get things started as quickly as possible. So in a situation where we experience some emergencies, we want to try to get through that preliminary phase as quickly as possible. Okay, construction procurement methods. Now we've all seen these different procurement methods, from in-house staff, CM at risk, unit price, design, bid and build, time and materials, design, build, and then finally job order contracting. When you start to look at a procurement process for an emergency project, what is the quickest way to get a project started? And with that, we're going to talk a little bit about job order contracting, how efficient it can be during an emergency situation, and the benefits of job order contracting. So the definition, it's an IDIQ contract. Okay, enables facility owners to complete a substantial number of individual projects within a single competitively awarded bid. And then construction tasks are based on preset costs. So here we hear a little bit about cost control, which is a very important part of the you know, getting projects started, is controlling that cost. And we'll get into a little bit more about cost control here in a little bit. So the value of job order contracting, fundamentally different construction procurement relationship. It's about developing relationships. Jackie mentioned a little while ago about getting the right contractors doing the right jobs, knowing what those contractors are capable of doing, and also being familiar with their quality of work, and more importantly, how well they communicate with the owners. And so contractors are subject to different motivators and behaviors when we're dealing with a job order contract. Again, it's about establishing a good, solid working relationship between the contractors and the owners, a non-adversarial relationship between owner and contractor. So this goes back again to not only just establishing that relationship, but contractors knowing that when they perform well on one job, they know that the probability of getting the next job, or even the next job, will come to them just based on their performance. Jackie or James, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I wanted to add about that non-adversarial relationship between the owner and the contractor. A lot of the contracts that are put in place through JOC are performance-based, as John said. And so that truly is, it's like you have to evaluate your contractors and what they're good at and what they're not, both as a partnership. And so there's a lot more incentive for them to make sure, like John said, we got to do a good job all the time so that it doesn't affect our future work. And in emergency situations, this comes into play a lot more, because this, in an emergency situation, pretty much their performance is going to show the owner, can we count on these guys as partners to get us through these situations? And so I've found that a lot of my clients, they find value in this. And in an emergency situation, because of their performance through their overall contract, we know who the ones we are going to call in this situation. And then when they get it done, it just flows. And so it's something that's very important. And I think it's one of the positive aspects of JOC, because they know that if they do good, they'll continue to have more work. And it's over years period, not just a one time or not just a 12-month time. And I think that that's a great incentive.
Great,
Yes,
that's great information, James.
Yeah, just wanted to cap off that point and drive it home. In job order contracting, the contractor's profit is a function of construction volume. So the more work they get, the more chance they are able to be successful in the JOC program. And that is why they want to submit proposals on time. They want to get do quality work. So they continue getting this work assigned to them by the owners, by the cities, and they are able to be a successful contractor in a job order contracting program.
So that is one of the benefits of job order contracting, is the relationships that the owners build with the contractors. And so that's important, because when we come to experience an emergency situation, owners know who they can rely on to actually get those projects started. Okay, so that's very, very important. And thank you, Jackie and James, for touching on that. So types of projects. So from one competitively awarded contract, you can procure an indefinite number of projects, anything from a straightforward new construction, repairs and renovations, as we mentioned, replacement in kind, maintenance, and emergency work, and time-sensitive projects, including alterations. So with one contract, you can perform many different parts of of construction. And with that, we like to think that with job order contracting, getting a project started, it helps with having the confidence to pick up the phone and get a project started in a timely manner without having to sacrifice staff time trying to get these projects started in a timely manner. So let's talk a little bit about the JOC benefits. Simplifies the procurement process. Now, when we talk about simplifying the procurement process, we think about the different ways that we can procure construction work. Okay, and with job order contracting, knowing that there's already a contract in place, we already have contractors, standing by to get, ready to accept the work and to get started with the work. This simplifies the procurement process. So it cuts the procurement process by more than half when initiating a job order contract job. So faster response times. Again, we've touched a little bit on this at the very beginning, and throughout, you'll be hearing a lot about a response time and how important that is. So being able to get through that procurement process as quickly as possible, obviously, is very important to get these emergency projects started. Also improves the quality of work.
Hey, John, before we move on to the quality of work, which is extremely important, I definitely wanted to touch on the simplified the procurement process and the faster response time. Especially in the emergency situations, one of the things that facility directors have definitely told me is that if you're in an emergency and you have to respond immediately, I don't have time to procure something. I just got to get it done. And I know that this has always been something that has been a challenge, because procurement states depending on, where you're at, there's procurement regs that say if you're spending more than $10,000, you have to get 3 bids. If you're in an emergency situation, it's difficult to do that because a lot of the times you don't even know exactly what needs to be done because you're reacting to everything. So having that flexibility of having a contract in place and the fact that you have on-call contractors already, it truly does simplify the procurement process because you don't have to worry about procurement coming down on you saying you got to stop doing this or put a halt to something. You can truly, because you know that the contract's already in place, get the work done. So you can truly start at a fast pace. And then again, as John's gonna go into, it allows you to start at a higher quality when it comes to the work.
Great point for mentioning that, Jackie. And as Jackie mentioned, obviously the procurement process is one of the greater benefits of job order contracting. As she mentioned, that improves the quality of work. Preset pricing eliminates negotiations. Here we're talking about controlling costs, and that's actually a key factor when we're dealing with emergency projects, because as we all know, when we are dealing with emergencies like the most recent pandemic, emergency labor rates inflate up to 2 times more than the standard labor rate. And so with that, there's some benefits to that using job order contracting with a preset price. So increasing local subcontractor participation reduces change orders. Now, when we talk about change orders, unfortunately in our industry, we cannot eliminate change orders and all, right? But we can greatly reduce those change orders by having a job order contract in place due to the detail, due to the conversations that happen in the preliminary phase of a job order contract. Fully transparent process, and then saves time and money. So all these things, all these benefits are done through a job order contract, a good job order contract. And so the job order contracting solutions, quite honestly, enables the facilities to complete a large number of construction projects within one competitively awarded contract, okay, based on a set of comprehensive, detailed pre-priced construction tasks. So job order contracting eliminates the time, expense, and administrative burden of completing the normal design, bid, and build cycle for each project, and also delivers good, solid, quality construction faster and more cost effectively with complete transparency. So a lot of great stuff that happens when you're using job order contracting. James, do you have anything to add? Okay, so moving on. So proven benefits, time savings, as we mentioned, design, bid, and build, JOC with design and JOC. As you can see, with your traditional design, bid, and build, it can take months before you can kick a project off, depending on the process, depending on the complexity of the scope of work. Using the design, bid, and build can take quite a bit of time. JOC with design obviously cuts that by more than half. And then finally, when we're talking about straightforward job order contracting, you can have a project started within days and weeks versus within months. And so a lot of great benefits there when talking about using job order contracting for your emergency projects or any projects for that matter. Cost control.
John, if you don't mind, I'd like to make a comment on that as well. So just looking at the design bid build aspect with the bid documents, advertise, bid evaluated award, these are all for the JOC program. You only have to do that once. You send out the RFP, get the contract on board, and that is the only time you're able to go out for advertise for a project. Others, you can it's an umbrella contract that you issue project after project under that. And in my personal experience working in New York City and at the Department of Environmental Protection, my clients have told me that they want to use the job order contracting program and avoid that bid process for each job because they need this work to get done within the next month or two, as opposed to having to wait 6 months for this job to actually get the contract documents, the drawings finalized, go out to advertise, review that, all the bids, and award to the correct contractor for work to begin. And so we get a lot of work funneled through the job order contracting program just because we've done it once, and for the duration of the contract, we can just issue project after project. So that is something that I know that is a big deal with using job order contracting in New York City.
And I just want to add one other thing to the job with design portion. I think this also ties into having the internal staff spread thin. One of the things too, again, we've been talking about is definitely the partnership with the contractor. If there's a project that requires design, you don't have to wait for the full-on design in order to actually start understanding costs and schedules that tie to the project. So for a lot of projects that I'm working on now, we're going through the permit process, but depending on the city that you're in, you don't need 100% construction drawings in order to do that. So it's leveraging those partnerships not only with the client, but also with the contractor, utilizing their expertise in order to make sure, can we truly build this project? How much is it going to cost, and how much time is it really going to take? You don't have to wait until the end, until you get your building permit and then do the bid process. You don't have to wait for that anymore. And that is truly a time savings, because sometimes, as much as I'm an engineer, so I love engineers, but we have to admit that they get fancy at times, and some of the things we can't do, unfortunately, based on, especially on the facility side, based on the budgets that you have. So you leverage the partnership with the contractor. You can VE immediately, even before you get your permit drawings, and know, okay, exactly what we're doing, how much is it going to cost, and how long it's going to take.
Thank you, Jackie, for all that information. And thank you, James, also for sharing some of your insight. And as you guys have heard, job with design, or just quite simply a job order contract for any of your projects, and including emergency projects, there are some benefits to it. Time savings is a big one. And so, when it comes to procuring work, a lot of my customers and clients, that's one of their key aspects to a successful project, is getting things started. I recently had a project that had a car accident. I had a lady that was actually driving a vehicle, and she had a stroke. Now, before I get too far into the story, obviously there was an accident that occurred. Everybody was okay. The lady did end up in the hospital, but with some very minor cuts and bruises. But what ended up happening is she ran into a building, and obviously created quite a bit of damage on the exterior part and on the interior part. So now we're dealing with a building that is exposed to the elements, and now there's a security issue. And so my customers decided that the quickest way to get this project started and completed was to go through a job order contract. And so we got that project started within a matter of days. We happened to have a couple of contractors that were in the area. We explained to them what was going on, and because they were under that JOC umbrella with Gordian, they were able to get boots on the ground and get it started. And more importantly, they were able to actually secure the building in order to get those projects started. So a lot of proven benefits, a lot of time savings. And again, dealing with emergency projects is very important to have a plan in place and get it started as quickly as possible. Cost control. Now, we talked a little bit about this already. Preset prices for tasks. Costs are known before work begins. Adjustment factors included up front, and no extensive negotiations or no cost negotiations. And then contractors are ready to perform with preset prices. So again, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, is that when we're dealing with an emergency situation, for instance, the pandemic, we start to notice the emergency labor rate inflating. So now we're talking about things are starting to, costs are starting to rise. With a good JOC program in place, we have a construction task catalog where contractors can go in and develop a job based on the scope of work, selecting preset prices from a construction task catalog. And so you're able to control that cost up front, for one. Two is you know exactly what the work is going to cost you before the work actually begins. And with the details provided, it also leads to great conversation between the contractors, the engineers and architects, and the owners. And in my experience, you know, during the preliminary phase, during the phase of building the jobs and putting the scopes together, in my experience is it's the detail provided in a Gordian JOC proposal that leads to great conversations that eventually get us started on the right foot. And again, it goes back to not only cost control, but transparency. James, do you have anything to add, or Jackie?
Sure. So just to touch on the price control as well, cost control. So an owner's number one priority during any emergency situation is to mitigate that damage as soon as possible, which kind of results in the owner having less control over the project cost, as these contractors will typically charge a premium to get that work done. So when you have this job order contracting program in place, the leverage kind of turns back to the owner in the sense that we know we're expecting a fair price. The prices were preset in the construction task catalog that the contractors bid on at the beginning of the contract, and there's no price negotiation. They get the unit price times the adjustment factor times the quantity of what they are performing and asked to perform. So that is how the job order contracting program can be beneficial to owners in this regard as well.
Jackie, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you guys covered this one.
Okay, great. So proven benefits, transparency, owner rates, job order contracting 2 times more transparent. There's a lot of benefits, as we mentioned before, to job order contracting, and a lot of proven benefits based on just the results that we've seen using job order contracting with our owners and with our customers. And so a lot of great information when we're talking about different aspects of the job order contract, from cost control to the transparency of a project. I touched a little bit on the details provided by a JOC Gordian proposal. And so with all this information, again, one of the key elements to a great start to a project is communication, is having a good conversation about your scope of work, about your costs, all up front. And with a JOC proposal in front of you, we're able to have those conversations with the owners and with the contractors. So talk a little bit about responding with a job order contract. Here you're going to see a few examples of some of our customers that have used job order contracting in emergency projects. Here you can see Arizona with they had a flooding situation that occurred here on the top left, and they called upon Gordian and job order contracting to go in and start the recovery process there. You see some ceiling damage. We had some water intrusion in some ceilings in some buildings there, and they relied on Gordian's JOC program to get in there, get the contractors on site, and get those things repaired. On the bottom there, you'll also see some road damage that's been utilized through the JOC, and also there on the right as well. Jackie or James, you have anything?
Yeah, so one of the big projects that have stand out right now that I'm working on is a HVAC system on the roof. One of the pipes connected to it, actually, it just bursted. And what happened was it was leaking for a while. No one knew until you had a gush full of water. So emergency projects always tend to snowball. They start on something, and then until you can actually control it, can you really figure out what is going on? So it turned from water leaks to mold issues to damaging of units that we had to all fix within a 48-hour period. And one of the things on the emergency projects with JOC is that you can go ahead and resolve the issue now, and then you can plan for what needs to happen. So if you have to keep units offline because you have to abate, or you have to vacate a section of, a classroom because you have a damaged ceiling and wet floor and just a complete mess, you can fix it in the long term as well, because you can start with the contractor that responded on the emergency basis and then actually finalize it once you get the money and the time to actually do it. And so that's one of the great flexibilities that I think a lot of my facility directors have appreciated, because they're like, look, I just need to get it fixed now. And then they'll get that temporary fix, and then they'll shift over to the capital side, and the capital, they'll take it from there and do the long term. And so that's definitely one of the benefits with JOC, that you can start on the emergency and then continue until you finish the entire project.
Now, and I'll add on to that in terms of what I've seen in New York City as well. Obviously, with the Department of Environmental Protection, Hurricane Sandy was a huge emergency response incident that was needed to be taken care of. And because the JOC program has been at the DEP since 2000, they've been using us consistently. They put in over $22 million worth of repairs due to Sandy, which included emergency pump operations, the installation of temporary pump around systems, the installation of sandbags, reconstruction of skylights, removal of damaged trees and power cables. They were able to use this successful JOC program that they've had in place to get this work done immediately. And to be honest, some of this work is still coming up as we're going through through FEMA and just getting this work completed and paid off. Still some lingering effects, but they've been able to get all this work done because they had this JOC program in place. And that is one of the biggest examples I've seen working at the Department of Environmental Protection up here in my time with Gordian.
Thank you, James. So really excited to actually share the next couple of slides with you here. The McCormick Place Alternative Care Site. Obviously, we're all dealing with the pandemic currently, and because of that, we've had a lot of uptick in some requests regarding addressing the pandemic issues or the pandemic emergency situations for some of our clients. And here we have from the city of Chicago in late March, they reached out to Gordian to coordinate some contractor activities. As you can see here, Gordian helped deliver 3,000 patient rooms furnished with the best and other basic healthcare items. This also included 14 nursing stations, support rooms for medical supplies, storage, pharmacy, and housekeeping services. This was to serve as an alternative care site during the pandemic. First 500 beds was partnerships between local contractors, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Illinois National Guard. And so really excited to share this just because the response was quick. And not to mention that this project actually started, it started back in late March, and this work was completed by the end of April. So that time frame, that window there was very, very short, and we're able to get that kicked off and made it a successful project. Here's the other thing that I'm really excited about, items that are added to a construction task catalog through a Gordian program. Our construction task catalog, I like to say that it's always evolving. And what I mean by that is that our cost data engineers get together and come up with different types of construction task line items, and we keep up with those, okay? One of the key aspects to a CTC or construction task catalog that we provide through our JOC programs is the preset pricing. And so we provide over 250,000 construction line items to help contractors build actual proposals. And the reason I'm really excited about this particular slide is because of the pandemic, our cost data engineers and we're able to go in and add these line items to our construction task catalog so that some of our customers could utilize these line items. Contractors could use these line items to build their proposals for the current requests for the pandemic projects that have recently occurred. And so, again, providing a construction task catalog, preset prices, transparency process, all key elements to a good JOC program through Gordian. And the conversations that we have during and right before and even after the construction has been completed. You know, the partnerships that are developed are very, very important. Jackie or James, do you guys have anything to add here?
No.
Nope. That was good.
Okay, so moving on. So job order contracting through cooperatives. Job order contracting through cooperatives. So Gordian has an easy IQC program, which just leverages cooperative purchasing networks. So we've developed an indefinite quality contract to make its industry-leading job order contracting solutions available through cooperative purchasing networks. Okay, competitively bid. Job order contracts are awarded recognized cooperatives organizations. Contracts are based on construction task catalogs. Again, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, the construction task catalog, and competitively awarded so local contractors are able to get started on projects immediately. We've been talking a lot about response times. We've been talking a lot about getting projects started as quickly as possible. Jackie mentioned a couple of times about, you know, talking to some of the owners, and quite honestly, their owner's request is, I just need to get these jobs started as quickly as possible. And so Easy IQC program that Gordian has is one way to get those projects, started. Here you can see the different cooperatives that Gordian has for our Easy IQC program. You'll see PACE there, Sourcewell, KPN. You also see Buy Board, of course, Epic 6. So there's different Easy IQC co-ops that can be utilized to get projects started through our Easy IQC program. Jackie or James, do you guys have anything here?
Yeah, I'll just add that. So what Easy IQC is useful for is for owners that can't sustain their own JOC program, like the Department of Environmental Protection or Sanitation, and they can go through these co-ops to use the job order contracting program within that region. So that's the benefit of an Easy IQC program, and they get their regional data and all the support they need of a JOC program just through the co-op, and that's how that is a benefit.
And that's right. And a lot of questions that I always get is, well, what if I'm not a member? Well, that process is quite easy, and working with your Gordian representative can help you kind of get through that process and get you signed up for any membership through several of these different cooperatives. And again, Easy IQC program is built for the owners that need work done now. It's made to be able to provide the resources needed to procure work as quickly as possible. And with Gordian, leveraging those co-ops can make that possible as well. So now I'd like to, I guess, just turn this back over to our moderator.
Thank you. Thanks very much. This is Anne back on the line, and thank you everyone for the presentation and for your that information. And thank you to our attendees for sending in some questions. We do have some time, so we will cover as many of them as we can. And if we don't answer your question, get to your question, I should say, I will be sharing them with the speakers, and they can address those offline. So we'll jump right into it. So I'll just put this out to each of you, and whoever would like to jump in, please feel free. I want to start with, we do some questions about the pandemic and COVID-19, kind of what's been going on with that from your perspective. But I do want to just touch on quickly an overall question that kind of frames the conversation here. And in terms of what does Gordian do to make sure that material, equipment, and labor costs are accurate in your catalog and in the pricing that you do, in the costs that you do put out there? What do you do to make sure it is accurate as far as the market's concerned for your clients?
So I could take this one, guys. I work a lot with our cost data team throughout the years. So Gordian does have a dedicated team of cost researchers who use the local material, labor, and equipment pricing. Since we all know the construction will be more expensive in New York City compared to, say, Lubbock, Texas. Then we have like a team of engineers specialized in civil, mechanical, and electrical fields who analyze and select means and methods to ensure the the task item cost is accurate for complete and in-place construction. So for example, what equipment is required to complete this task, or the productivity rate of the crew. These are all analyzed and put into a formula that we were able to create this cost that includes labor, equipment, and material. And then we have that cost data will then undergo statistical validation by our data scientists, and our catalog engineers will ensure the data is accurate for client-specific CTCs. That when we customize our construction task catalog, this unit price book, for our clients, are able to get the items that they need to complete their specific job that they have in mind. So our cost data is an integral part of the job program success, and we do these costs are updated continually. Anything else to add to that, guys?
Yeah, just one thing, like James said, the other thing too that our cost engineering team does is they do pricing based on where the contract is at. So they do their own research as well. So if clients wanted to customize, say for example, they only wanted to use lock and bar boilers, our engineers will go straight to lock and bar and work with what the pricing is for that specific area. So it is definitely not only formulas that have been developed, but it's also speaking to the people that are actually going to deal with providing the material as well, to verify that.
And just adding a little bit to that is also, establishing upfront fixed costs for all the work. So this protects the owners from cost inflation during an emergency situation. And so that also, helps keep costs accurate and keep costs down for the owners.
Thank you all. Okay, so I do want to touch on some of the questions we got about the current pandemic, current crisis that we've all been dealing with in one way or the other. And we do have some questions on that. I wanted to, I guess I'll put this in a two-part question and pose it to each of you if you have something to weigh in on. The question is, what projects, can you talk about a project that you've dealt with or been aware of as a response to COVID-19, an emergency project that's come around that has been handled under this JOC framework? And then kind of to a piece of that is, how were conditions for that unique to the pandemic addressed, such as additional cleaning, PPE, social distancing? How did those realities play into the emergency response construction projects that any of you have seen in the recent months?
So I think I can answer those questions there. So obviously it was all new to us as far as how to get some of these projects started. And the challenge was altering spaces, working spaces in schools and in public buildings, trying to figure out the best possible way to create safe work zones or safe work environment to bring people back to work. And some of the things that I've experienced is we've gone in and have established some scopes of work dealing with altering some of those workspaces, whether it's adding plexiglass, creating more space by adding some space to certain areas in order to provide a safer environment. As far as contractors on site, obviously there was a learning curve or learning process there, trying to figure out the best and safest way for all folks, including contractors and owners and anyone else that needed to be on site during some of these projects, and creating a safe environment for them. So adding certain safety stations, whether it was taking temperatures, providing masks for all the contractors and anyone else that was entering the building. So there were certain rules that started to apply, and as we kind of went along with some of those projects, those actually developed into some more safety precautions dealing with contractors on site and owners of such. So, but a lot of the projects that we've seen more recent, it had to deal with, there was an uptick on infectious disease control cleaning. How are we going to create these? How are we going to make these spaces cleaner and safer for folks to come back to work? And then again, as I mentioned, alterations to workspace. And then we mentioned a little bit earlier about the McCormick Place Alternative Care Site, where the City of Chicago reached out to Gordian to help deliver these patient rooms and essential items. And so a lot of successful projects, learning process, we got through that, and we were able to get those things started rather quickly and adapt to some of that.
And just to add on to that, as you were saying, so New York City, we were all aware too, was the epicenter of COVID-19 back in March and April. So as you can imagine, the hospitals had to find some sort of way to deal with the influx of all these patients coming in and having to treat these sick patients. So they were actually, New York City Health and Hospitals used the JOC program for just to help with this process, from electrical power upgrades and outlet installations, automatic sliding doors to make it easier for movement, negative air pressure spaces, mainly in patient rooms, but also emergency room space, and of course, just to clean and disinfect the interior spaces and expand patient rooms. They used the JOC program to be able to do this within a 2-month time period. And so they were able to get this done because they were with us, had a JOC program in place, and were ready to go.
Thank you. Jackie, any comment on that, or I can move on?
You can move on.
Okay, thank you. All right, everyone. Well, we do have time for one last question, so I will pose this again to whoever on the panel is wants to address it, one or all. And the question is actually about reimbursement, specifically about FEMA reimbursements. And what about FEMA reimbursements? Have you what has your experience been with that? I know there is an emergency declaration that was back in March with FEMA reimbursement, and I'm not sure if the question is about prior to the pandemic or now with the emergency declaration, but have there been any experience with FEMA reimbursements? Our asker here has had clients who have a hard time, getting the reimbursement in a timely manner. So just wanting to see what any of your experience or insights might be on that.
So speaking from Sandy projects that are, there's still some of them are trying to wrap up. Some of that is FEMA money, and they've actually brought in their FEMA consultants to come in and audit or make sure that the proposals are payable and can get this closed out. I'll say the only thing that has made it easier for them is that breakdown of the proposal with individualized task items, so they know what has been installed, so that when they're coming in to do all these reimbursement processes and making sure the auditability of these proposals, they've been able to do it by jumping into these itemized proposals and can see what has been installed and see the proper backup that the contractor submits to that, to make that process a little easier, even though we all know that's a headache to begin with in the first place. But I don't have too much other experience with that other than these couple of projects that are lingering. But if any of you have something else to add to that?
Yes, I can quickly add to that. So it was not FEMA, but it's definitely insurance, where the housing authority has to pay, has to go to the insurance to get money back for fire damaged units or any structural issues. And so they'll get audited. And since the whole program, the whole process is done so that it is an auditable and transparent process, it's made it a lot easier to justify costs. And then in addition to that, sometimes there's grant money that's given that you have to actually do the work up front and then provide the cost. With DCSCU, for example, the energy company in DC, they provide grants for boiler work or for lighting and so forth. So we have to, the Housing Authority has to go and provide that line item proposal and the scope of work as justification, and then they get the reimbursements that way. So everything that revolves around the JOC process is done so that it is auditable. It's not only Gordian auditing what's going on, but also HUD auditors will come in, city auditors will come in. So we have to make sure that everything is transparent.
Yeah, I think just being compliant with all the federal regulations, and as you know, we've all kind of alluded to, the Gordian Easy IQC program, you know, with state and local governments across the country have used this Easy IQC to complete a broad range of construction projects, you know, utilizing federal funds. So Easy IQC, the JOC program, meets all the applicable federal procurement standards and by non-federal entities, and including the requirements of 2 CFR Part 200. So that process is put in place to help owners not only get the project started quickly, but to help them, you know, with the reimbursable funds.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It looks like we are out of time. Thank you for answering that last question. Appreciate it. Thank you, John, Jackie, and James, for your time today.
Thank you.
all.
And thank you to Gordian for sponsoring this webinar, and of course our audience for attending and for sending in your questions and for your time today. A recording of this webinar will be available online at facilityexecutive.com. It will also be available on Gordian's website, and that's gordian.com. If you'd also like to learn more, you could visit their website there. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon.